Okay, so this video is a MintSkull video, which is somebody that we've watched on the channel for quite some time. He's a friend of the channel. He does watch these when we react to them. So hello, hi. He does watch these when we react to him. He's a very popular dude. Definitely does a lot of good work. This one is a retrospective that was suggested by Uzi, actually, talking about how Doctor has changed in like the entire history of him being in Dead by Daylight up until this point. So yeah.
Dead by Daylight has changed a lot through the years, with some of the maps completely changing visually to killers that got their entire powers reworked. When you think of an example of this, most think of Freddy Krueger as the most popular rework, or the Legion.
I think Freddy's is the worst. I'm gonna say that right now. I think Freddy's is the worst because they, like, I understand that old Freddy was like weak, but like they took all of the personality out of the character to make him like a good killer TM. You know what I'm saying? Like Freddy's old power was bad, but it was like more representative of like him as a character than like whatever he has now. Like whatever he has now with the, like the teleport and the snares, it's just kind of like generic killer power TM, you know? Like, yeah, previous Freddy had this thing where he had to pull people into the dream world and be able to hit him, and it was like really like, it was really like emblematic of the IP. But now he just kind of has generic slowdown power, generic teleport power. You know, it's like he has generic chase power and generic teleport power. Like he's very much just kind of like, he just kind of exists. he is a Dead by Daylight killer, you know? He just has the generic killer kit. Like, he has the most generic, I feel like out of most characters in the game, he has probably the most generic, very basic, bare bones kit of any killer in the game. Put the snares to stop people, or put the snares down, make people go slower, and if you want map mobility, just teleport over there. It's like, so just like Resident Sleeper. He is so basic. He is so aggressively just unimaginative that it's really frightening, considering the fact that, you know, he's one of the most popular horror IPs of all time, that his power is so bland and just normal. So
changed more recently, but one of the killers that changed the most by far, surprisingly, is the Doctor. Not only was he very impactful for the game back in 2017 with how advanced and unique he was compared to the rest of the characters, but he's also the killer that evolved the game into what it is now. Let's take a look at how the Doctor sparked a new beginning for Dead by Daylight.
It sparked a new beginning. Haha, good one! Good one!
2017 was a very weird time for Dead by Daylight.
He's effective? I hate fake pallets. Fake pallets are actually the weaker power of his.
There was no consistency as to what we were going to get in the future, as there was no guarantee of a new DLC each quarter like it is now. There were no leaks. I missed
that. I missed that. Like this whole, I feel like the quarter thing, like this whole, like, we have to get things out at like every 1.5 months. I feel like that's like, I feel like there's definitely been a sacrifice in quality to keep up that that schedule. I feel like there's definitely been a sacrifice in quality to keep that schedule going, because like I would rather have them like have patches that take longer but are actually addressing the right issues in the game and are more imaginative and actually come out to be really high quality than sticking to like this 1.5 month thing that they do and kind of just going, hey, nurse is slightly different. That's about it though. Like they just these kind of like sort of things. Thought the mic covers part of your mustache. Yeah, it is. It's connected to me.
Tell you what the next 3 chapters were, and the game was still in its infancy. The last major update we got was the chapter of Flesh and Mud, which introduced the Hag and Ace Visconti, and that was it. It looked like
always
nothing
Ace
was
came
going
with
on
Hag.
in
That's
Dead
such a
by
weird
Daylight
thing to think about, but it's
until
true.
Suddenly, on the DBD subreddit, someone posted that there was a forum voting in the Chinese community of Dead by Daylight, where they announced the next killer to be introduced in the game, with this image as the teaser for the next killer, and a description that reads this. Turns out, while in the English community there wasn't much going on,
yeah, so he's probably going to talk about this, but they actually had to change Doctor's backstory, because shock therapy is still very much a very prevalent thing. like literally this is based off of something that like vaguely happened. Like obviously, you know, inspired by a true story. Take with that what you will, because that's, you know, it's inspired by something. But like, yeah, China's done a lot of bad stuff. China's done a lot of bad stuff. Continues to do a lot of bad stuff. But yeah, this hit a little bit too close to home for China, and the reason they can't do that is because DB actually has a really, really intensely large Chinese audience. They just do. So you can't. So it kind of hit close to home for them.
A major success in China.
They changed him.
And the developers promised the Chinese players that they will make a Chinese-inspired killer to be introduced in the game. A user by the name of Esther decided to make a poll in the Chinese Steam forums in order for the players to vote what the Chinese killer will be inspired by. A lot of the options were based on Chinese
yes,
mythology.
horror is the point of DBD, but it'd be like, I don't know. It'd be like if they made a generic killer in DBD that was like kind of like relatively close to like Jeffrey Dahmer in real life, right? Like they make it's an original character, quote unquote, but like he does all the same things that Jeffrey Dahmer did in his crimes. That would be distasteful, right? Because like the families of the victims already hate all the media that exists out there about Jeffrey Dahmer, and that is already distasteful, right? So it's like the 9/11 man, yeah, it's like you would never do something like that, right? You would never do something like that. But like this was a little close to home for them because like
all traditional stories like Hebai Wuchang, who are two deities of the Chinese folklore that escort the spirits of the dead to the underworld. But one of those options stood out the most, a Chinese professor by the name of Yang Yongxin. Why would a real-life person be right there with ancient Chinese gods and mythos? Well, the reason as to why is really creepy. Yao Yongxin was a Chinese psychiatrist who became very famous due to his methods. He advocated for the use of electrotherapy in order to cure the internet addiction of the teenagers in China. Who was his first ever patient? His own son. Apparently, he used a method called the Patients Committee in order to make sure that every single patient is obedient to him. If any of the patients reports that there was a problem with another one, or if someone is not obeying the rules, Yao would make sure to turn the potency of the treatment more in order to cure them. He also would increase the potency of the electrotherapy in order to make the patients admit that they are addicted to the internet. Now,
so essentially he was like kind of like very low-key torturing these kids, you know? Like very low-key actually just torturing these kids. So like I like like to relate it back to like the Dahmer example. It's like you wouldn't put a character in your game based off of like a real life person that did real life horrible things. Like you can be like vaguely kind of like, you know, you can vaguely like the Danny Johnson, for example. Danny Johnson, which is, you know, he's Ghostface, but he's an original character. He's an original Ghostface. Like his backstory is new. Made by Dead by Daylight, has aspects of it that kind of like homage to like serial killers, right? That like existed in real life, like his methodologies, his like his ego and stuff like that, like that, like you can reach and say that's kind of like this killer. This is kind of like that killer, you know. But like he wasn't like, he's not like you know, what am I trying to say here? He's not like clearly an homage to his very specific killer that had real life victims with real life families, you know. He's just kind of like vaguely realistic. But with the Doctor, they were going to make him like very clearly this guy, except turned up to the ninth degree, right? Yeah, Leatherface is based on Ed Gein, and that basically only exists to like be based on a true story. It's like nothing is really similar besides like the furniture thing that they both do, but everything else is like the family, Bubba himself, like everything's different.
Let me ask you, does any of this ring a bell? This is because this was the winner of the voting poll, and the Doctor is based on Yao Yongxin. Yao was added as a joke character just like Steve is in Super Smash Bros. He was just supposed to be an Easter egg, But as we all know, the Joe
An
character gets
Easter egg for real life torture? He was supposed to be added as an Easter egg for real life torture? He was supposed to be added as an Easter egg for real life torture. Yeah, that's a sentence.
all the votes and hype, and Yao was considered an evil character to all Chinese players, so in reality, even if it started as a joke, he was a perfect fit for Dead by Daylight, and so it began. The creation of a killer that is based on a real-life Chinese doctor that would have a Chinese hospital as the map and that would use electricity in order to torture the survivors. And this is basically how Feng Bin was born.
Yeah, because Feng Min, her whole thing is that she's a pro gamer, so she would fall into that doctor's, like, you know, definition of someone being like internet addicted, because obviously it's her career to play video games professionally. So yeah,
that story is basically a internet video game addicted Chinese esports player.
Yep.
So this was a perfect combo chapter for Chinese players. It was basically a love letter. To this day, this is the only ever chapter in Dead by Daylight that was fully influenced by the community. But now that we have the power of retrospective, you will notice that something went wrong. While Feng Min is Chinese and an esports addicted player, the doctor is not Chinese. Instead, he's called Herman Carter and he's American. The map is not Chinese either. Instead, it's called the Larry's Memorial Institute, located in Illinois. So
yeah, they basically swapped Doctor from being like, you know, Chinese focused to kind of like the secret kind of like, you know, unethical practices that have, you know, supposedly gone on and sometimes proved to have gone on within like America's like, you know, big, you know, like CIA and intelligence and all that stuff. Like, you know, kind of pushed it more towards something that was like, you know, a little bit more of a clear dig at like something more general and not like specific person that had like specific innocent victims previously. Do you think the Doctor's fair is OP? I think he's like a middle of the road killer. I think he's like, he's got good info because of his static blast, and he's got his he has anti-chase, but you like it's very easy to mess up the anti-chase. Like, you actually have to be good at it to get value. I think he's a middle-of-the-road killer. He doesn't really have any map mobility or any way to pressure the map, like, consistently. Really. There's certain builds you can run that can kind of make him kind of annoying, but nothing, like so oppressive, like, you know, like Nurse running quad slowdown and Blight running a bunch of, you know, slowdown. Like, nothing that intense. So, like, he's kind of a middle-of-the-pack killer. He's kind of all right.
What happened? Something really big happened. Behavior decided very late in development that this is a bad idea. They do not want any trouble with China,
yeah, exactly, Toto.
And they would
that's a really good way to put it. They retained the inspiration, but like they didn't put a spotlight on the bad person that, like, you know, committed these crimes and did these horrible things. Because that's the problem with, like, that's like what the victims' families have problems with, of people continually making all these documentaries and shows about the Jeffrey Dahmer situation that happened, is because it's kind of like, in a certain sense, you're glorifying him. Like, you're essentially saying like all the stuff he did was like amazing and we should all pay attention to it. Like, you're kind of like rewarding him for these really awful and vile things he did to people. So, like, in a weird sense, it was kind of like, this is like similar to that like you're taking this awful thing that this guy did, which was, you know, kind of, you know, torturing people for some weird misplaced feeling of morality because people were internet addicted. So he literally physically tortured them. Like, you can't, you like, monetizing people's suffering. That's another great way to put it, actually. Like, monetizing people's suffering is not the play. It is not the play. It is not it.
Want any legal problem that this DLC could potentially bring. It already made waves of news across the Chinese community, and it even made an impact outside as more and more people knew about this Chinese doctor. In fact, even to this day, in Yang Yongxin's Wikipedia page, there is a mention of how Dead by Daylight Spark of Madness DLC was inspired by him. And we know that Behavior is no stranger to change an entire character really quick. as you could see in my Wraith theory video.
Oh,
In
I've never
fact,
seen that.
I believe that Matthew's comment in that video is also a reference to how the Doctor's lore was completely changed at the last second.
The Wraith was moved, lore and everything, to the junkyard.
Sometimes these things happen quite fast.
Yeah. And then we're like, oh, okay, let's change everything.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna say this. This is gonna sound weird coming from me, but I don't know. Watching interviews of them talking, it seems like they still enjoy making Dead by Daylight. I think it's like a thing that does always warm my heart. Is that like it seems like they still enjoy making DBD. I think most of the problems come down to like balance and like common sense decisions when it comes to like keeping it a party game but not keeping dumb stuff in the game. But like it sounds like they still enjoy making their game. You know, which is nice. Like they seem like they're proud of it, you know? A lot of people do messed up stuff for the attention in Infinity. They don't care if you say bad things. Yeah. So if you're basing an entire character in a video game or making an entire Netflix show about this person and the things they did, it's like, you know, at what point are you encouraging that to happen down the line as well?
luckily, unlike the Wraith, where we almost have no official evidence of his previous design, we do have evidence of a Chinese doctor in the files of Dead by Daylight.
Do we?
Doctor's original name was Mu Yi.
Ah.
We know 3 of his add-ons that had remnants of the past names in the files. The scrapped tape add-on was originally called the Jade Charm, and jade is a very appreciated stone in China.
Interesting.
Maple Knight was originally called Namnu Catapult. Namnu is a type of wood that is very precious in China due to its high quality, but the catapult is a weird choice. Maybe it was one piece of the table game that he used to play instead of the final chess piece. And finally, the interview tape was originally called Tiger Fang Charm. Sadly, we do not have any visual remnant of the add-ons, but what we do have a visual of is the Doctor back when he was Chinese, and this is it. Now you might be saying that this is just pre-reworked Doctor, and you are right. Behavior did not change the Doctor's facial structure or skin tone at all, because they were not able to. Creating a cinematic for a chapter not only takes a lot of resources like money and time, but having to completely redo it from scratch would be a major waste of that already invested time. The original trailer for Dead by Daylight was not changed, and it featured the old survivor, which proves my point even further. So if you ever believed back in the days that Doctor was Asian, only for people to correct you into saying that he is Afro-American, well, technically, you both are right.
That's
His design
weird.
was supposed
That's
to be
strange.
Asian, but it was retroactively changed to be American. And sadly, we do not have any idea of what the original lore of the Doctor was supposed to be before it was changed
Well, we can take
to
a
the
guess.
MK Ultra lore we have nowadays. But the map is what interests me the most about this change, because it featured Chinese words originally. Larry's Memorial Institute was supposed to be a Chinese map.
Interesting.
And we can see the remnants of it in all the developer update streams that showcased a walkthrough of the map, which is what you're seeing right now. Besides that, back before the visual rework of Larry's, one of the original Steam screenshots of the DLC also featured Feng Min walking around the map, where you can see a red Chinese banner in the background.
That's crazy.
And the last remnants we ever had of a past Larry's are found in concept arts that I bet you
Looks
never
good. Yeah,
saw
the
before.
graphics are kind
And
of,
each
but
one
like
shows a
stylistically,
different thing that was
like
scrapped of the
it
map.
has a lot of
The
character
first
to it.
image shows again Chinese letters in Larry's with Meg on the front. Besides that, there isn't much to see. The second image showcases Claudette near the library part of the map, and you might see that it is extremely dark. This is because originally, the devs wanted to have dark spots on the map where survivors could hide. They even said
it used to be hide and
that
seek
this
game.
map was going to be the darkest map to date,
Really?
which ended up being the complete opposite on the side.
Which is funny because now we hate that, right? Like we aggressively hate that. Remember the PC bug on Garden of Joy, where the Garden of Joy main building was just like pitch black upstairs for so long? We hated that, dude. If you put down Shadow Step in that building during that patch, like, good luck if somebody ran through there. You would never find them. They were just gone. They were just bye, see ya. Like, because they could just like tuck in a corner, and you would just never know. You would just never know that they were over there, like, at all. So I think it's interesting that's something that they at one point wanted, but now if you put that in a map, we're like, get it out, get it out.
Same kind of thing.
Yeah, it actually-
Yeah, I agree with like and that's what I kind of hate about all the new remakes. Like, aggressively, all the new map remakes are very like clean in a very not good way, in my opinion. If I bring this up, like Coldwind just looks like a sunny evening on a normal farm. Like it does not look like you're in a horror environment. It literally just looks like a normal sunny evening on a farm. I feel like it lost all of its character when it got remade, and a lot of maps had lost a lot of their character when they got remade. And it's just sad, and I miss all that.
Again, we're like, this is gonna be the darkest one.
It's gonna be so dark. Pockets of shadows.
Pockets
the
of
final
shadows.
image is, in my opinion, the most interesting out of all of them because it showcases what was supposed to be the treatment room of Larry's, that middle point where in the final version there are a lot of TVs and a second.
I've heard that before, Reese. I've heard that before. People talking about how like maybe they should take all the assets of like Hawkins and turn it into a general map, but I don't know if they can do that because their licensing with Netflix seemed pretty deep. Obviously, they literally had to change the names of the perks to be able to continue to use them in the game. So probably something similarly strong in binding is there with the map as well, and that's probably why they didn't end up going that way. Is because I would assume that something probably extends to the laboratory as well.
Floor. According to Dave Richards, this was scrapped because it looked too old for the purpose of the chapter. And that is right. It's really interesting to know that maybe in a different universe we would have had this map instead of what we ended up getting. And now, let's take a stroll around all Larry's so you can see just how different it is compared to the reworked version. As you can see, it was a very bright map and it featured a lot of cameras everywhere. The signs that show what type of room was each one are completely gone, and instead it's painted on the walls. The library features a dust effect inside the room, which looks kinda cool, but it really tanks the frame rate.
Yeah.
Even on my laptop, this map ran slower than in the live game, which shows how much this game got optimized. And this can also be caused because of the pre-reworked Doctor having a massive amount of static aura all around him, which looks very cool, but it is very distracting.
Yep.
And since we already started talking about old Doctor, let's showcase him and how he used to be before the rework. Now, let me tell you, the Doctor's core mechanics never changed, yet original Doctor still is a very, very bad killer compared to what we have now. In fact, I would say that if this Doctor was to be introduced in the current game we have now, he would be by far the weakest killer in the game.
Really?
And he was considered very weak when he was released. First of all, the Doctor was a stance change killer. He had two stances, treatment and punishment. In the punishment stance, he was an M1 killer and he walked with a normal speed. That's it. On his treatment stance is where things get interesting. First of all, he did not have the static blast attack that covered his terror radius. Instead, it was a constant stream of electricity for every survivor that was inside the terror radius. This meant that he had passive tracking, something that nobody really enjoyed from the survivors. The only counter to it was to hide in a locker, and that was it. The next thing he has is the static shock, which is still unchanged mechanically.
Love that show.
You charge an attack and you release, increasing the madness of the survivors hit by it. However,
but you can't
this was
do damage, so it
only
doesn't really
possible
matter.
in the treatment stance. So in other words, his anti-loop was extremely weak. The Doctor did not have the incapacitated status effect that Doctor has now, where they cannot drop pallets or vault windows if they get hit. So originally,
what's the point?
devs intended you to use treatment only as a tracking and madness increase tool.
That's such a time sink for literally nothing. That's such a time sink for not literally nothing. It is a little bit of info, I guess. But like, that's such a time sink for nothing. Remember, we always say this every video. Time in DBD is gen time. Time in DBD is gen time. You're spending that much time and all you get is some info from it? Oh my god. You're right. Yeah, that would have been really garbage. Really, really garbage. You have RPD and Freddy in your sleep? Yeah. Wasn't that a bug? Wasn't that not supposed to be that dark? Wasn't that a bug with the whole RPD being super dark in the dream world? Wasn't that not on purpose? I think I remember that.
Later on, they added the incapacitated effect to his shocks, but it was still a very weak anti-loop mechanic because you had to change your stance to treatment first since you walk slower, then you had to charge your attack, hit the survivor with a cooldown, and finally change your stance back to punishment in order to M1 attack the survivors. And did I forget to mention the fact that the original range of the static charge was extremely small? The Doctor was very pitiful, but there was one trick that made him extremely overpowered in one specific niche scenario. If you face camped a survivor and you spammed the shock attack button while in treatment mode, you can grab survivors that attempt to rescue without a single counter, which was extremely OP during those times. And another fun fact about his power was how originally, when a survivor increased their madness tier, they would see a jump scare of the Doctor's face fully in the screen, which was removed from the game due to the migraines this effect caused. The only way to see this jump scare face is in the television in the center of the Larry's map, which uses the same assets.
I didn't know that.
Finally, his add-ons were mostly unchanged. He was one of the killers with the biggest variety of add-ons in the game, as each one added new illusions to his madness. The most outstanding add-ons are the skill check displacement ones, because originally these were not base kit until they were made so later, and the obedience add-on, which is completely gone in the future, and it gave exhausted to any survivor in madness tier 3. Nowadays, an add-on like this does not exist in any form. The Doctor got some changes across the updates to make him feel better to play, increase the speed at which he changed stances, increase the range of his attacks, and most importantly, they made it so that his snap out condition was counted as a healing action, which skyrocketed the popularity of the perk and Nurse's Calling.
I'd imagine so.
Fact, the devs had problems with making it so that the illusion doctors had the same outfit as you did, so it was very easy to know which one was fake. But
that's funny.
Even with all the flaws in his design, the Doctor was still a very important step for the future of the game. No killer before—
He's technically the first anti-chase killer. A lot of people, when they talk about like the frustration of the onslaught of like anti-chase killers, just like because now like half the roster's an anti-chase killer, right? Like in between new killers that they're releasing versus like updating old killer kits, most killers are anti-chase now. There's a whole lot of them, and a lot of people like to point back to Deathslinger as like the first like anti-chase killer. Like, hey, it was Deathslinger. Deathslinger's the one that kind of caused the landslide of everybody having some sort of anti-chase ability from that point on. But in reality, it's probably Doctor, right? He's kind of like, he didn't have the in-cap initially, but he's technically the first one that caused this whole like, you know, landslide into anti-chase. And Poison, thank you so much for the follow, Fred. I appreciate that. Hopefully your date's going well. We're doing some React Indies to some DBD YouTube videos. Yeah, he may be better, Zan. He may be a better anti-chase killer. But if you're really thinking about the first person who, like, quite literally has an ability that directly stops you from, you know, reaching resources, that's Doc, buddy. You can blame old Herman. Tuesday night.
Our Doctor has such a high amount of variety of add-ons, each including a completely new and power-changing illusion like fake palettes, fake terror radius, fake illusions. Doctor was by far the most complicated killer in the game, with 2 different stances, and he was definitely an experimental character to see how unique and special they can do each killer. It was also their first attempt to use AI in the game, as the Doctor's illusions had to follow specific rules in order to spawn.
That is true.
Technology
I haven't thought about
that
that
I think will be used years later for Pinhead's chain spawning mechanic.
True.
Larry's Institute was also the first ever indoor map.
That is true. It's like a vending machine that you put in the money, you didn't get anything back out. The machine just ate it. That's literally true.
Which RPD, or the Rest in Peace Hawking's map, the Doctor stayed with his old kit until the patch 3.5.0 mid-chapter, and this was one of the biggest mid-chapters in the game. This patch completely reworked the Larry's Memorial Institute map visually, as well as reworked the Doctor's power and add-ons to be what we currently have in the live game. During this patch in specific, however, his madness passively decreased like in the past, as well as the reverse skill checks were not yet made a part of his default kit. But besides these two things, the Doctor is almost unchanged to what you can play right now if you start your game and choose Doctor. But what is very special about this killer is that for the first time ever, Behavior updated a past map in order to reach the current level standards, as well as this was the first time ever where an old killer was introduced a menu lobby theme, as well as a chase music for the Doctor.
Reading me. No, wait. Hello, friend. Thank you so much for the raid. Mario, hello. Welcome in. How was your stream? How was Overwatch? Were you guys having a good time? You should be fine.
Marking a very important step in the history of Dead by Daylight. Doctor was a precursor for all the Realm Beyond map upgrades and visual upgrades that we have had since then, and also all those amazing chase themes like the Legions and the lobby themes that we are getting to this day, like the Hag.
Yeah,
the
me too.
Doctor's update sparked a new life into Dead by Daylight, proving to the old players that outdated things were going to be changed, improved, and polished. This is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated patches in the history of the game.
Really?
As for the Doctor's face and visuals, he received a visual update in the patch 4.7.0, which was a long time later. But it's funny to mention that his face in the portrait is still the old Doctor, as well as basically all his cosmetic items in the store. And I have no idea why they haven't updated his portrait yet. There is only one cosmetic that still features the old Doctor's face, and that is his surgeon cosmetic from the store. The Doctor might be low on most tier lists, and a lot of survivors...
I don't think he's low. I think he's just average. I don't think he's weak. I think he's just average. I think he hangs out in that weird demo zone where he's neither good nor bad. He's just kind of like around, right? Like he's not aggressively weak, but he's not aggressively strong. He just kind of like hovers. He just hard exists, which is fine. It's just like
might also hate
I don't think he's bad.
Annoying builds that people create with the Doctor's power. But one thing is undeniable: the Doctor's chapter is one of the most shocking chapters ever introduced in Dead by Daylight.
Aha, shocking. Ha, shocking. Aha, good one. Good one. Very, very good one. Aha, good pun. Good pun. You did it. You made it funny. Congratulations. But yeah, that yeah. I actually knew most of that stuff, which is interesting, which kind of shows you how much I guess I spend time with old players in the game. I actually knew a whole lot of that. But yeah, I didn't know they got that deep into like had that far into him being Chinese. Like I didn't know he had a new name. I didn't know he had all of Larry's like with Chinese lettering. Like there's like I didn't know like they got that far into the process before they had to switch his backstory. That's interesting.